Hello, bookworms. Welcome to The Best Book Ever, the podcast where we get to know interesting people by asking them about their favorite books. Quiet by Susan Cain is the deeply researched book about the power of introversion in a world that prizes the extrovert. Many of the great thinkers and innovators of our society have introverted natures, but they're often encouraged to overcome introversion through their lives, as if it's some kind of character flaw instead of embracing it as a superpower. I'm your host, Julie Strauss, and today I'm talking to physician Rohit Marawar, who tells me that he is empowered by his introversion in his work, in his family, and in his life. This was such an illuminating conversation about why Quiet is the best book ever. Good morning, Rohit. Welcome to the Best Book Ever podcast.
Thank you, Julie. It's great to be here, and I'm looking forward to talking about this book.
There has to be a joke in here somewhere, right? What happens when two introverts talk about a book about introversion? Or do you want to just sit here and read together?
That would be great, but I don't think, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think introverts have a good sense of humor? I'm not sure.
I think introverts have the best sense of humor, to be honest, because they watch things.
Yeah, my wife says that. My wife says I have a good sense of humor, but I always say to her, it's because you love me. I don't think I have a good sense of humor.
Can you tell me about the role that books play in your life in general?
I used to be a voracious reader. I used to read multiple books per week growing up. Summer vacations used to be amazing. I would read like 2 books a day or something like that.
Oh my gosh!
Like back in school. That's a very fond memory I have of about reading. But I think as I've gotten older, I've read less and less books. Unfortunately, I think distractions are everywhere, obviously, including more responsibilities and work and those kind of things. But I would definitely like to read more than what I'm reading right now.
Where do your interests lie in general? Are you a fiction reader, or do you tend to stick with nonfiction?
I think I used to be pretty much 100% fiction reader as I was younger, but probably starting in my mid 20s to early 30s, probably, I think I would say. I have almost completely switched to nonfiction at this point. So I hardly read any fiction books.
Little? Is it work related?
It's more along the line of self-help, productivity, little bit about, let's say, neuroscience or brain, which is my area of expertise. But it's more, I would say it's more about self-help than anything else.
How did you find this particular book, the one we're talking about today, Quiet by Susan Cain? Do you remember when you first came across this one?
So I don't exactly remember when or how I found this book, but I have a very vivid memory of just being completely engrossed in this book back in 2013-14. So I was using the audiobook. And I had a very long commute, around an hour each way at that time. So, listening to this book was absolutely amazing. It completely changed the way how I see myself and how I perceive the world around me. It probably single-handedly has been a book or an item or an object that has kind of changed me completely.
It's so interesting you say that. I actually have that down here in my notes because I think the phrase life-changing is thrown around willy-nilly.
Yes, absolutely.
I drank a life-changing Frappuccino yesterday. I got a life-changing pair of jeans, and I do it too. But this is a book that, for me, that is not an exaggeration. This book changed my life. And
yes,
I have spoken to so many people over the years who said, I read that book and it changed everything. And I don't know any other books like that people have that reaction where they say, I understand now.
And I think we should be thankful to Susan Cain for writing this book. I think all of us.
Tell our listeners what it is about.
Quiet. So Quiet by Susan Cain. It's about in some ways it's about the author because she highlights how she was as an introverted individual in personal and professional life. But along the way, she provides a lot of scientific evidence about what introversion is, as well as what extroversion is, how it relates to how they relate to each other, and and also a lot of real life examples of introverted people and how they I don't like to use the word overcame, because when you say overcame something, it means that it was a disability or something like that, right? But let's just say how they overcame, for lack of a better word, how they overcame whatever problems they had because of introversion. And then she also offers some practical advice for introverted people, for introverted and extroverted couples, and I think and the advice that she provides are, I think, are very practical and very actionable. So it's the way it's kind of structured. Also, I love the way it's structured. It's like the first one third is about what it means to be an introvert, and how society has kind of put a negative connotation on the word introversion, on the word shyness. The middle third is all about the scientific evidence and the progress that has been made in understanding personalities better, including introversion and extroversion. And then I think the last third provides more practical advice. So I love the way it's structured. And as I've been kind of listening to the book and reading the book again in preparation for this podcast, I realized that so many of what I do now, I probably got it from the book, because it's been almost 10 years that I've read the book, and I never kind of visited it again until recently. And the only thing that kind of stuck for me is that introversion is physiological. It's not pathological. It's different. It's not abnormal.
Can you tell me the difference between those two words? Physiological and pathological?
So physiology is our normal, it's a normal functioning. It's a normal body and system processes. It's our normal biology. It's how things function normally. That's physiology.
Okay.
And obviously, pathology is a lack of physiology. It's something that's abnormal. So pathology. Any disease is a pathology. Any mental disorder is a pathology. So it's abnormal. But introversion is not a pathology. It's just a different personality. And so I shouldn't say I love to say this, but this is kind of my favorite thing that I think about, is that it's physiological, not pathological.
Yes. When I was growing up, I thought there was something wrong with me for the way I was. Did you have that feeling as well?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
This book gave me the realization that it's not wrong. It's just how I am, and living in a world that is not built for this.
And what happens, I absolutely felt that. I absolutely felt that there is something wrong with me. Mm-hmm. And society does not do a very good job of making people feel normal if they are introverts, right? So because our ideal is extroversion or extroverted individual, someone who likes to go out, likes to talk a lot, likes to make lots of new friends. So growing up, people would, they didn't mean any harm, but people would just, casually say, oh, Rohit doesn't talk that much, or he doesn't, he's shy, or, he likes to be with himself. He likes to close the door of his room when he's studying. But at that point, I associated all of this with just being shy. Because that I did not know the word introvert, right? Right. That is something that came into my vocabulary much later in life. So I just assumed I was shy, but even that felt abnormal. or it felt that there was something lacking in me. It felt like I'm not who I'm supposed to be, and this is something that's kind of unacceptable to the outside world. So you're absolutely right. It did change my own perception in me. I definitely became. First of all, I accepted who I am, and I think any path to change or improvement starts there, right? For accepting who you are and what you are, and I think once I accepted that this is who I am. I'm a little bit different, but that's okay. And there are a lot of people who are like me. It's just that because all of them are probably by themselves, we don't come across them as much.
Yes.
I don't remember the statistic in the book, but probably like 30 to 40% of the people are introverts, and that's a huge number. I mean, they would identify themselves as introverts. That's a lot of people. So it definitely changed how I thought about myself, and once I made peace with that, I was then able to focus on what I needed to do in both my personal and professional life to to survive and to thrive. And I think at that point, when I first read the book, is I think we were a couple of years into our marriage. And as I said, my wife probably falls more along the extroversion spectrum. And so ours was an arranged marriage, and it was it's so we knew each other, but we didn't really know each other very well. And she was in India and I was in US during the time that we were talking and kind of dating, I would say. So it was I think for her it took a little bit of time to really understand that why at the end of a busy day I'm not communicating with her. I was wiped out. I was exhausted. I did not have the bandwidth to make conversations. And I think but once I found this book, I gave this book to her and I was like, you should listen to this. You really need to listen to this. And she did. And it was amazing because, she's like the most supportive wife I could imagine. She knows when when there are people around or I'm overwhelmed by all the stimuli. She realizes it and she's like, okay, go take a break. I got this.
Uh-huh.
So it's not only been helpful for me, but it's something that and then I can give to my loved ones to and tell them, look, this is exactly what I feel, and so it helps them also deal with me in a better way, I guess.
I was thinking about it a lot as I was reading this, thinking about you as a physician. And I was thinking about how physicians are always presented to us in the media. And, you see them, you watch these shows and they're all running around screaming, CBC, Chem 7, and all that stuff. I don't know what any of that means. But they're always really aggressive. What is it like to be a physician and to be the type of person who needs to absorb and who needs to think and make decisions without being that screaming aggressive person in the ER that we see on TV? Like, do you have to explain yourself to your patients and say, I need a minute to think?
No, I don't think so. But I'm sure that sometimes I come across as as if I'm not paying attention, or as if I don't care, because it's a lot of it's a lot of stimulus, right? You're listening to what they're saying, you're processing in your head what this condition might be or what they might be going through, and then at the same time you're thinking about what needs to be done. So while this might come naturally to many people, for introverts, I think it's a little bit more difficult. In some sense, I'm lucky that I'm a neurologist, because we do, there's a lot of kind of pondering, a lot of thinking, in neurology, which is good. But what is not good is, as I described, is we have to talk a lot with strangers, with
Yeah.
patients to get information. So, if I had probably understood myself better, I might not have chosen neurology as a specialty.
Really?
Because yeah, well, it does involve talking a lot, and asking a lot of questions. It can be tired. It can make you feel tired, it can make you feel exhausted. But I'm lucky that I am in academic practice now. So I transitioned from private practice to academic practice around 5 years ago. I can focus on research, I can focus on administration, teaching. So academic practice in that sense has been much more fulfilling and much better for my overall kind of health, I guess.
Because the other thing, it seems to me, is the emotion is also a big stimulus. And a lot of times, well, maybe all the time, when people are seeing a doctor, they're usually afraid, particularly, I would think, when they're seeing a neurologist.
That is yeah. So you're right. After you have gotten all the information you need from the patients, then it's your job to counsel them, explain them what's going on, what are the treatment options, what is the short-term outcome, long-term outcome. It's very fulfilling, it's very rewarding, but it can be exhausting also. But then the non-clinical days where I'm not seeing patients, they offer a regenerative break for me. Now I can get refreshed, and I can go back to seeing patients, and I think that helps me improve patient care also, because I'm not tired all the time then.
I like that word, regenerative. That's a perfect description of it. When I go in my room and shut the door, I'm not being rude. I am truly filling up again so that I can deal. Otherwise, I can't cope with everything that goes on in my house.
So even for my study, my door is always closed. And again, some people might think that I'm doing important work and I shouldn't be disturbed, but it's more for me. It's like, I need that break from everything else, as you said.
I sometimes wonder if my book life is a way for me to disassociate from the stress. I do sometimes think, or I think it's 99.9% a very helpful thing in my life, but sometimes I think you are just trying to disconnect from everything.
Yeah, but that's okay, right? I mean, if you completely fine, yeah, you make certain choices in life based on your personality, based on who you are. So I think it might be, but that's a good thing. I mean, you probably found a hobby or a sidekick that works perfectly for you.
Tell me about it in terms of parenting. Now that you understand your introversion, has it changed your parenting life?
I pick up signs that other people might not in my son. So I see that he is, what Susan Cain refers to as high reactive. Like he gets easily scared or overwhelmed by a lot of people. He's very social. If you talk one-on-one with him, he's like so charming, and he will ask you questions, he will interact with you. But when when you introduce him to a group of people, he gets very overwhelmed. A parent who is not an introvert might not understand that, or might think that he is scared, but I don't think he's scared. I think it's a stimulus that he cannot handle at this point. If my son does become an introvert, I'm definitely never going to admonish him for not talking to a group of people, or not, or being quote unquote shy. It's I think the book has definitely given me enough information, knowledge, and skill to recognize what I should be doing as a parent.
Is this a book that's regarded in the medical community as an authoritative book?
I don't really know, to be honest. I've never openly discussed the book with my colleagues or peers, so I have no idea. But personally, I like that it is well researched. I like that it is somewhat scientifically dense. Because what happens is, I think most of the, as you will attest to probably, is that most of the nonfiction books, they are based on a kind of a single idea, and then they kind of hammer the same idea over and over again for 300 pages. And a lot of the ideas and principles in social sciences, they're not necessarily backed by science. They're backed by anecdotes or case studies, and so it's very difficult to extract what these social study based books have and apply it to your own life, because they are just describing a case study or some kind of anecdote, but when it is as scientifically researched as this book is, I feel a certain degree of confidence in what this book tells me. I don't feel that amount of confidence in other books, which are not as scientifically dense. And I think the other thing is, as you go along this, as you keep on reading this book, there are new ideas on pretty much every page. It gradually kind of holds your hand and guides you through the different aspects of introversion, rather than the other books, which could have been which some books can just be a blog post. They don't need to be books. They just keep on going on and on about something. Yes. But you can't say the same thing about this book. So I think that I really like that. In digital writing, they say you should be very specific in your writing. You should write for one person, and then when you write for one person, it will apply to many. And that is what I felt, and I'm sure probably you felt too, is that when I read this book, it felt as if this book was written for me.
Yes.
As if Susan wrote this book just for me. And I think that's kind of one of the greatness of this book.
For me, I have a really vivid memory of this book because it came after we attended a party, my husband and kids and I, and the party went long. It was a lunch and it went long. And toward the evening, more people showed up and someone said, let's order pizzas. And the hostess got really excited, like, oh my gosh, it's now going to be a dinner. Let's do movies. And she was thrilled and she got really almost hyper. And I said, I have to go home. And she kind of made me feel bad. Why aren't you staying? We're having such a great time. And I went, we are having a great time, but I'm about to collapse. And then on the drive home, really, and on the drive home, I started crying because I started telling myself that story in my head. Why am I not like her? I bet my husband wants a wife like her who can keep a party going. And I bet my kids wish I was like her. And I just had this feeling of I'm weird and I'm not right. You know what I mean? And then the next day, I read an article by Susan Cain in Oprah magazine, and I went, oh my gosh, this is me. This is why I started crying after being at a party for 6 hours, which is too long for a party. Nobody needs to party for 6 hours. Definitely. That's too long. And so it was a really weird confluence of events where I had a really tough time because my introversion was made me feel strange. And then if I had read this book one day earlier, I would have been able to say, nope, I've reached my max. It's okay. I'm not weird.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It does have that exact effect. And I have talked to many people who said the same thing, that I read this and I thought she was talking to me exactly.
Right. Yeah. And just knowing and understanding that builds up your confidence, right?
Yes.
I mean, you don't feel insecure. You don't feel unworthy. You don't feel as if you're lacking something. It just, you just go, okay, that's okay. In this, that is just me. Let's move on to something else.
Because I think that until this book really became a cultural conversation, we did not have a language for that in this culture. And we have a culture that is very much built around 6-hour parties. Which is insanity.
Even I mean, even when I grew up in India, and even the culture there is similar. Is you have to be extroverted to be considered, successful, or a role model, or however you would like to call it. But and even now looking back, I mean, I see so many of my family friends and people I knew, friends, and who I thought that they were shy, but now I realize they were just introverted. They were just like introverted like me. It's a but you don't make that connection when you are younger. You just don't you don't know about these things. So I mean, yeah, I think looking back, I mean, so many things I would have done differently if I knew what this is and how to deal with it.
Yeah. I wonder if there are any cultures that value introversion or quietness. I don't know. It seems like maybe a Scandinavian country. I was trying to think.
I think Finland. Yes. So Finland, yeah, you're right. Finland, Finnish people are extraordinarily introverted. But even like Susan Cain mentions in this book, right? I think there's a couple of chapters about Asian introversion. So like East Asian, so like China, Japan, I think these countries are they hold introversion to they consider introversion as a standard. They don't consider extroversion as a standard. So introverted children are the ideal children, not extroverted children. So I think there are some cultures. I don't know. Maybe things are changing now because Western influence is everywhere. So I don't know if that has changed.
So tell me, Rohit, what are you reading these days? What's on your nightstand?
Well, my bookcase has a lot of books that I haven't read. It's my entire library. So I think for the last month I've been just reading this. I'm reading The Art and Business of Online Writing. So that is something that I want to get into, online writing. So I'm reading that.
That feels like a very introvert tendency to read about it before you do it.
Yeah, you're right. You have to research everything before you do it. This is a really good book that I'm currently reading. It's called The Code Breaker by Walter Isaacson. So Walter Isaacson is the guy who wrote Steve Jobs' biography.
Oh, okay.
So the Code Breaker is about it's about Jennifer Doudna. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name right, but she is a genetic researcher at Berkeley University, and she's the one who she and a few others have developed this CRISPR technology that is changing a lot of things about genetic diseases and how we can treat them better. He's a very good writer. I think he's written other biographies, if I'm not wrong, maybe Benjamin Franklin's biography. So he's very good at biographies.
Oh, interesting.
This book that I finished reading maybe a couple of months ago, and if you haven't, you should, is Storyworthy. Have you heard of this book?
No, what is it?
By Storyworthy by Matthew Dix. You know about The Moth? The Moth is a oral storytelling concept.
Yes.
They go to different cities and they pull out the name of the audience from a hat, and you have to just go and speak at an open mic, and there's a theme to each session. So Matthew Dix is their kind of multi. He has won the national championship like many times or something like that. But it's a wonderful book if you love telling stories. If you love writing stories, if you love telling stories, and not stories when I say writing like fiction books or something like that, but even if you like telling dinner table stories, if you addressing a group of people with an interesting conversation, this is a really nice book that tells you how to construct a story. What are the things a story should have? how to start a story, how to end a story, what are the different components of a story. It's a wonderful book. I mean, I think everyone should read it because in our daily life, we tell stories all the time, right? So, we've been talking about stories. That's all we've been talking about, right, for the past hour. But this is a wonderful book that I think everyone should be reading. Story Worthy by Matthew Dix. What else? You want to hear more books?
Of course I do. I always want to hear more books.
Okay. This I haven't finished reading. It's a little bit dense for me, but I want to finish it. Is Caste, Isabel Wilkerson? Yeah. That's really fascinating because obviously we think about racism. That's we talk about it all the time. It's a big thing at this point, obviously, as it should be. But even growing up, in India, we have casteism. Mm-hmm. That's the equivalent of racism that we have in US. And she equates the two. She's like, it's just the same thing by, we've given different names to the same prejudice that we have. So in India, casteism is fairly significant as racism is in US. And I think that was so she narrates the stories of casteism in India, racism in US, how they are similar. It's a fascinating read. It's a pretty long. It's a pretty long book, and it takes it's a little bit dense. But that is something that I want to finish. It's very interesting.
It feels like it's something that you would have a real insight into. Having lived in both cultures, you can really see it very clearly, yes. I would think.
Yeah. And I think, probably people in India would be offended by saying that racism and casteism is the same thing. So, but, it's, or people in US would disagree that casteism is not the same as racism. But I think I think the way she presents it makes sense. They are kind of two sides of the same coin. It's a different tag. It's a different name that we've given to discriminate certain people.
Oh, this has been so interesting talking to you. I'm so thrilled you joined me. Will you share with my listeners where they can find you on any social media?
Yeah. So the only social media I'm kind of active on is Twitter. And my Twitter handle is at Rohit Marawar. That's my first name and last name. So at ROHIT MARAWAR. So probably that's the best way to find me.
Well, I want to thank you for joining me today. This has really been a delight talking to you. And I want to thank you for bringing me back to this book, which is just such an amazing book. Whether yes. you are introverted or not, maybe, I don't know. I have a feeling people who are interested in books and the reading life, I would guess a majority of my listeners are maybe introverts. I don't know. I'd be so curious to know.
Yeah, I don't know. But, even if you're not introverted, I'm sure you have an introverted person in your life. So
you do. Yeah.
So read it for them. They would appreciate it very, very much.
I agree. All right. This has been great. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. This has been fun and this has been great. And it gave me the opportunity to talk about something that I feel passionate about and an opportunity to go back and read a book that, as we said, has been life-changing.
Bookworms, I think readers are often automatically sorted into the category of introverted or shy people. But just like with most other personality classifications, I don't think it's entirely true. At least it's not 100% of the story. What's your experience? Are you one or the other? Have you read Quiet? I would love to hear your thoughts on this episode. Let me know on Instagram at Best Book Ever Podcast. I really look forward to hearing what you think. Remember, you can find links to all the books we discussed in the show notes or at my website, bestbookeverpodcast.com. And if you have a book you want to tell me about, click on the Be a Guest button on my website or Instagram bio so we can chat. Thank you for joining me today, and I will see you at the library.